Hello, and thank you for joining the Summer of Learning Career Snippet. My name is Nate Lagacy, and I've been with Aquent for 3 months now. Prior to Aquent, I was a creative director at a local digital agency here in Chicago. So I wanted to share some of what I've learned from my experience over the past 12 years of working in the digital space with you today, to hopefully you'll be able to take away some great understanding of how the process works from a web design start to finish within the context of a digital agency. So from the point of view of an agenda, really what I wanted to do is quickly talk a little bit about my background, also share with you some insight on the user experience process, as well as really walking through the different phases of a web design process. So that could be a web redesign or really starting from scratch from a full new website. So, I mentioned my background briefly, but really just to let you know, I started out right out of college in around 2000, where during the .com phase, where there's a lot of obviously the internet was becoming very prominent in the business space. So there I was working at an online agency, with an national online marketing agency here in Chicago, and then did some freelancing work for some global agencies in town. And from there, I spent the last 6.5 years working at a boutique digital agency in Chicago. So really, I've seen quite an evolution from really the web 1.0 to 3.0 in terms of how the web's evolved from a more static experience to more interactive experience to really the more mobile and social iteration of the web today. So what I'll do next is really kind of walk through the actual quick description of the web design process, and also with that, talk a little bit about user experience. And one thing I just wanted to hit on before going really deeply into the process and those roles and deliverables, I wanted to talk about the different phases, discovery, design, and development, and how those all are really part of the whole user experience. So typically today you'll hear UX designers, UX strategists, and UX has almost become a buzzword in some ways. But user experience has been a discipline for several years, and from a digital point of view, it is often thought of as the discovery portion of a project. But really, once designers are working on a project and thinking through how the content comes to life visually, they're also thinking about the user experience. The developers are also thinking about it from the point of view of, every decision they make and how the page is coded, using proper markup language, using style sheets that are put together efficiently, ultimately create a better, faster page load, which again creates a better user experience. So one thing to take away here is really user experience is more of an umbrella to this whole process. The next page is, I'll start going through the process in more detail. And you'll see how this process builds along the way. And one of the things I'd like to do is almost put it in the point of view of a real-life experience that I've had with some of my past clients. In the case of my last role, I was charged with leading a team to launch a global website for a global hair care brand. So we would do in the discovery phase. This is really all the planning and organization of the project, really determining the business requirements, functional requirements, all of the usability planning, technology planning, creating the information architecture and determining the content strategy as well as the social strategy and mobile strategy. So really, this is all about the planning piece and working with the client during stakeholder interviews, determining the features and functions of the site, making sure that those are then documented in these various deliverables and documents so that we gain an understanding of the client's goals, but also setting the expectations with the client along the way as of what the process is going to look like, and so there's less surprises along the way. So the next page here is really about going a little more deeply into the different roles, deliverables that are in this discovery phase. So typically, you'll have information architects, user researchers, content strategists, social media, and even mobile strategists at this point as well, really thinking about, again, all the planning that goes into building the site. So typical deliverables for a information architect include sitemaps, use cases, wireframes, page flows or task flows, prototyping, whether those be low or high fidelity prototypes, really thinking about the functional requirements and determining those as well, working with the business stakeholders to mesh the functional requirements with the business requirements. So really thinking about those types of goals. User researchers, in some cases, they're really in charge of putting together usability reports and facilitating user testing along the way. So, that can start at the beginning, but really, clients and the agency would recommend the clients to be able to test things along the way through these various checkpoints so that we can validate our key demographic and the users that we're targeting for the site are accomplishing the tasks that, that we hope or want them to. So with that, user research is a big part of it as well. Content strategists, these guys are folks who are really going to be thinking about the content and creating personas who are again, the key users or the demographic for the site. So really determining the story about who these people are and what we want them to be doing on the site. They'll create content audits, content analysis. If it's a new site, it's really determining the content, whether that be, all of the various assets in a product catalog or, if it's depending on the goals of the site, if it's very text heavy, really determining all of the actual content. They'll also do analysis of existing content if if it's a website redesign. So if we're starting with a site that's already existing and there's new content being added, or just really redesigning it from for whatever reasons or whatever goals, really determining what the current content looks like and analyzing and making recommendations for what content should stay or go or be adapted or readapted in certain places. They'll also be looking at competitors and doing competitive analysis, as well as thinking about mobile strategy here as well. And so social media obviously is a really big part of Web 3.0, the very social mindset of all the sites today and sharing content. So social media planning and strategists will come into play here as well. And one thing to note that depending on the scale of the organization, whether it be a large agency or a small agency or a large corporation, sometimes these roles are, sometimes the information architect will have to wear many of these hats in this, depending on the scale of the organization. So just something to point out there, so to be considering. So the next page, what I wanted to show here is an example of a deliverable that would come from the discovery phase. So in this case, I'm using an example of a sitemap for, again, using the example of our global hair care brand. So in this case, the goal of the sitemap is to organize the content and create the overall global navigation and sub-organization for the various verticals within the site. So really organizing the content. And in this case, it was for a salon professional is the key demographic. So making sure that there's an education component, making sure that the product catalog is there, and making sure all of the various information that relates to the different products are accounted for. In some cases, these sitemaps can be several pages as well. So this, you'll see notes that kind of link off to different pages within the sitemap. But really, again, it's really kind of looking at a bird's eye view of the process itself. So that leads from the discovery phase into the design phase. So once the planning sessions have been completed, once we've gathered all of the business requirements and they've been documented into the various deliverables, that information gets handed off to the design team. In some cases, the creative director or designers will be involved along the way in the discovery phase as well, just as more of an observer. But the design phase is really when the website comes to life visually. So really, it's about implementing the design grid, creating the interface guidelines, and putting together what's called a visual design, which are generally the Photoshop documents that are designed to accommodate all of the various key templates of the site, homepage, any major landing pages or product pages are usually designed in this stage, and they include all of the various brand guidelines or the color, typography, imagery, illustration in some cases are put together in these documents. Sometimes the video is even considered in the design phase as part of the content. So really, it's all about bringing the site to life visually with the content. In some cases, there'll be interaction designers, user interface designers if for specific roles within a team. Again, if there's a large enough budget or large enough team, and they're really in charge of thinking through all the various, hit states of a link, hover states of buttons, all the colors, creating a uniform experience that really goes back to thinking through all the various states of an interaction. So a rollover, if something is a module needs to be expanded, thinking through all of those various user interface elements so that they can be designed and then communicated to the development team. So in some cases, there's also a lot of asset production, or in content creation. So in the case of the global hair care brand, since it was such a large, robust site with several hundred products, each of those products the imagery needs to be, cropped and saved, and all those various thumbnail sizes need to be considered. So, really thinking through all of the various components that need to be incorporated into the site that may not have been designed on every single page during the actual visual design presentation. So the next page, I'll go into a little more detail about some of these roles again. So we have, visual designers, user interface or interaction designers, motion or flash designers, and copywriters are usually the roles that are working together in this phase. So visual designers, or sometimes the visual designer and the interaction designer wear the same hat in terms of thinking through, again, all of those various interactions and the designing for them. But typically, visual designers will be doing the interface guidelines and creating the design grid, which will inform everything from how large the imagery and how large the text, what the content framework looks like and how it scales, especially considering responsive design and thinking through various, not only desktop environments, but mobile environments, tablet environments, and how the site reacts amongst all of those different environments. So that's where the design grid is really important. So the creative concepts and the site layouts, these are generally, really the visual, again, that presentation layer that's being designed to demonstrate the range of pages, but also a range of concepts. Sometimes, in my past role, really making sure that the team was creating multiple concepts to present to the client, so they had a range of different choices to choose from. So, these can be just different interpretations within the brand guidelines of, how to treat colors and typography and imagery and the illustration, really, bringing those to life visually. And then creating a style guide for the development team, so developing that in a way that outlines all of those hit states of the buttons, the links, all of the various headline sizes, the typography selections, putting those together in a style guide that can be shared with the development team so that it just makes it much more clear as they're building the CSS and HTML how to bring this visual presentation layer to life. So the interaction designers and user interface designers are typically more focused on, again, those hit states and thinking through the different modules and functionality and how they come to life visually on the site. So in the instance of maybe a global nav that has a large rollover, thinking through those menus and the various rollover states and link colors so that those can all be documented. I put Flash and motion designers in here in this case because again we're talking about that presentation layer, and animation, video sometimes are a big part of that. So they'll be creating storyboards as well as the actual videos and animation that would come to life on the site. Copywriters are also very important here as well, working with the visual designers to craft the messaging in a way that makes the most sense for the user experience. Typically on websites, copywriters are going to want to be focused on how to create the messaging in a way that makes the most sense for the experience. So, it's probably more of a actionable path versus a long form in some cases. It's, thinking about the calls to action. The next page here is really a good example of, how the visual design comes to life. So, conceptual layout and user interface, how it's brought to life visually. So, in this case, again, using the example of a global hair care brand, this is one of many potential ideas that could be presented to the client that demonstrate all of the brand guidelines coming together, all of the imagery, the assets for the model, the typography, the messaging, the various functional elements, how the user will interact with, in this case, the rotation on like a main home page, using the arrows to indicate that there's more content here, and even having a little indicator of where you're at in a wayfinding device, where you're at in the actual process. So really just, another great example of how the visual piece comes together, and, client would choose from a couple different options of these key templates, and, make their choice. And then once these are signed off, once the visual design has been determined, we transition over to the development. So again, you see how this process builds, and under the development, we've had in the discovery, we've had the planning, design, we've had the actual creative development. In the development process, this is really more about the construction of the site, bringing it to life from an interactive level in the actual browser or in the actual mobile experience. So we have, the functional code and interactivity are being created here. So the design has been signed off, the planning documents have been approved. Now at this point, it's all about bringing it to life in the actual code. So the front-end developers will be putting together the HTML and CSS along with, working in JavaScript frameworks like Ajax and jQuery, really bringing these functional elements to life. Sometimes PHP, depending on the robustness of the site. We'll also be thinking about search engine optimization. So, how the page is laid out in the code determines how well it ranks, in a search engine. So, there's various, methods there that can be incorporated, but typically this is a place where it's considered as well. Testing and quality assurance are also important during development. So, making sure that everything that's meant to be functioning properly works among all the various devices and platforms and all those different experiences. Typically, the CMS integration will be happening here as well. The development team will be, many sites today are built on content management systems, so it's really common that this is the phase where the CMS integration really comes to play. And then, of course, data migration when the site is ready to launch, making sure that all of the code and assets are uploaded to the domain and all the data is migrated accordingly. And that's definitely a process in and of itself. So the next phase, again, kind of goes into more detail about the roles specifically and some of the deliverables that they'll be working on. So in this case, the front-end developer is typically tasked with more of the HTML and CSS development, working with the JavaScript. In some cases, PHP, creating XML as well as the CMS integration. And I mentioned the SEO as well and the testing. The backend developers, they'll be working together with the front-end developers to really make sure, in the case of a large-scale site like a global hair care brand, that have multiple databases, multiple APIs, making sure they're hooking in together correctly with the CMS. In some cases, working in more of a, in some cases, open source environment. In some cases, more of a closed environment like a .NET solution. So, really, again, it's kind of the full development picture here. And I put the Flash developers as part of this process as well. They, there's certainly overlap in some agencies. It's, things are done a little differently, and some of the roles extend and overlap. However, typically there is kind of this distinction between a Flash developer and a Flash designer. So the last visual in terms of the, without being super interactive and actually being able to click around on the example, I'm using a screenshot of the actual HTML just to demonstrate sort of how many levels of code can be created. So, without going into specific details, really this is just an example of the HTML markup, the semantic markup that includes external links to style sheets, to CSS, as well as external JavaScript files, which from a content management standpoint is a really efficient way of structuring the code so that if, in the case of a large-scale site where you have thousands of pages, you can make edits to every one of those pages specifically through those external links, so those external files. So it's much more efficient and, for lack of a better word, sane way of approaching it. So with that brings me to kind of the end of this whole process. I hope that you'll be able to take something away from this experience and, really add to your understanding of the digital agency environment, as well as, keep you on your path of down the summer of learning. So thank you.